Welcome back to my channel, it's Joanna, and today's video is I quit teaching and I got in the Daily Mail. About 2 years ago, I made a video on my channel talking about why I quit teaching. It's not a very good video. I probably wouldn't recommend that you go and watch it. I'm not very articulate. My editing is atrocious, and I've matured a lot since then. But the points that I make still very much stand. All the reasons I quit are still the reasons that I cite today, and teaching isn't something that I'm going to go back into. Now, over the past 6 months or so, that video has got quite a lot of traction. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been on a family holiday down in Cornwall, and I got an interesting email. I got a random email from a senior editor from the Mail Online, which is one of the Daily Mail subsidiaries. He said that he'd came across my video, watched it, and he wanted to interview me and talk about why I quit teaching. I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to take it because journalists, they like to spin a story. You just never know how they're going to spin an article. The anxiety I had of my face being plastered on like the Mail Online. But I was swayed because the general election's coming up. The education system and teacher recruitment and teacher attainment is a real talking point at the moment. He wanted to talk about why teachers are leaving, why I left, why teaching is in such a dire state in the UK, and why everyone's leaving to go abroad. But I thought that it was potentially a good way to get my views across and share my thoughts on a different platform. So first of all, let's go to the news article. I haven't even read it yet. It's called The Great Classroom Brain Drain. Poorly paid British teachers are quitting their jobs in droves to double their money, live the high life abroad, and get their children taught in private schools. This isn't like particularly what he talked to me about. He was talking to me more about why I quit teaching, why it was so bad. My story is that I went into teacher training in 2021, got my PGDE from Scotland, and then I did my probationary year, or started my probationary year, 2022 to 2023. And I had my own class, so I was working full time, and I lasted till just before Christmas. In many ways, like I do love teaching and I love the kids. There's so much that I love about the job. But there's so much that's just not acceptable, and I don't think would be acceptable in any other job. There are lots of people that love to slate teachers, which is why I was a bit anxious to actually go ahead with this. And say that they're lazy, they get so many holidays, all they have to do is talk to kids all day and play. That's not the job. And if people think that that is the job, they don't know. They've not taught. There's just a lot to it, and it's really quite unpleasant. There's a lot of toxicity, especially with the stresses that are on schools and head teachers. If a head teacher is stressed, that seeps their way down. But I left after about a term and a half. I just was so anxious, like it ruined my mental health. I felt like a shell of myself, and even still, like I feel a real lack of confidence and anxiety. After I quit full-time teaching, I then jumped to the supply teaching route. Supply teaching was much better, I must admit. Like I found that the work was quite few and far between, to be honest. I did used to live in an area where there was a pretty consistent stream, but it was only like 1, maybe 2 days a week. So it really wasn't much. And when that's your wage, that's like you're working 4 days of a month, and that's not good. I moved to a different area, and guess what? There was even less work. So supply teaching, although I think it's a much better work-life balance, you get to enjoy just going in and teaching and sort of winging it, which I think is quite really great fun. There's a whole skill set there. It's just not consistent enough. On supply, I fell pregnant, and now I am happily a mother and I'm on maternity leave, which is now coming to an end. And will I go back to supply teaching? That is a story for another video. So that's my story, but let's go to the article and let's see what they're talking about. They are talking about how British teachers are quitting their jobs and moving abroad to enjoy less stress, more money, and a better lifestyle. It's also saying that teaching vacancies are at an all-time high, and recruitment firms are cashing in on the shortage, making millions by placing unqualified supply teachers or cover supervising into classrooms on rates even lower than full-time teachers would earn. It talks about how lots of people are moving away from UK state education and moving abroad to countries like Dubai and Australia, working in private schools, independent schools, to get a lot more money. So when I was getting my PGDE, my teacher training, a lot of the student teachers that I was getting trained with fully had the intention of getting their qualification, doing their probation year in Scotland and moving abroad. No one wanted to stay. And there are many reasons why, because in Scotland, there are no jobs. But in England, there are loads of jobs, but you get less pay and more stress than in Scotland. And Scotland's bad enough. Like, Scotland is stressful enough. I will add that as someone that was teaching in Scotland and who now lives in the north of England, I don't want to teach in England because I'd be earning less money, and I know that the stresses are even harder because you've got all like the stats and results. It's all performance based, and the reality is that there's so many factors that are going into kids' performance nowadays, with parenting, COVID, all these factors, that you as a teacher are not solely responsible for all of that, but the expectation is that you are solely responsible for behavior, parenting, social issues, impact of COVID, resourcing. There's so much that is put on you, and I just think, oh my gosh, I do not want to teach in England. So one of the people on the pictures in the news article, I actually talked with her. Got a TikTok. She moved to Dubai, and she seems to be loving it out there. Like, I think from what I've seen on her social media, she says that like she would never come back. So this person says, I felt like I was giving everything to the job and I was getting nothing back for it, and I'd be paid a fortune to do the same sort of level of work in a different industry. I wanted to save money to buy a house, but it was never going to happen while working in England. At the weekend, you can go swimming with the turtles, but you can't even afford swimming lessons in England. Literally, that is so true. Like, I've got an 8-month-old and we're paying for swimming lessons for him, and it's like £40 a month to go swimming once a week. And it is a lot of money on top of like all the other bills that you've got. She says that she wants to be able to save up to buy a house, which she can't do over here. In Dubai, the taxes are so different. I think it's like zero tax or something. A lot of people will go out there and build up in a nest egg. I know a lot of people that are doing it for that reasons, to go out there and just like earn a good amount of money and then come back. But a lot of people that once they actually move out there, they're not coming back. Like, the lifestyle that they get is so much better, seemingly. He also was saying, because there aren't enough teachers, full-time teachers, there are loads of companies that are reaching out to people for supply. When I actually quit teaching, I had loads of people spamming me on WhatsApp and LinkedIn trying to get me to be a supply teacher. The rates that they were offering me were so poor. I was getting so much more money as a bottom scale Scottish supply teacher from these English ones and with an agency, which is weird because whenever I've done temping before through agencies, the rate of pay that you get as a normal temp in any random job is often much higher than the person that would work full-time in that position. So I'm just scrolling through, and to be honest, nearly all of this article was just pictures of people living their best life. It was funny because when he asked me for pictures, and he said, can I get pictures of you doing your thing? And I was like, what do you mean doing my thing? Now I see what he means, because people are very much just doing their thing. Miss Mansilla appears to be in a giant bird cage. It does look like a bird cage. Let me tell you that much. I did send him a photo of myself, but it was like, I sent him a headshot because I had no idea that it would be like this casual. Like, so back to my part, what I played in this article. Let me scroll right to the bottom. I have pretty much the concluding remarks. Here we go. This is my part. Exciting. Vacancies have more than doubled in the past 3 years. Almost 1/3 of those teachers who qualified in the past 5 years have left the profession. And this is where it gets on to me. One former teacher is Joanna Stewart, 27, who began her probationary year in 2021 in a primary school in the south of Scotland. Now, this is my quote, apparently. I do know a lot of teachers that have had issues with children's behaviour, she said. I've heard stories of attacks with scissors, chairs, and all sorts. I personally haven't had any abuse from kids. I have heard quite a lot of people have quite abusive kids, even in primary school. Like, the scissor thing, I'm pretty sure that was like a P2 class, like, wild. But this isn't unusual. It didn't happen to me, luckily. Like, I have had children that have had a lot of additional needs, a lot of social and emotional needs, and really struggle with emotional regulation. And they would take that out in the classroom, but it was more like they'd rip up work or tell you to like be quiet, basically. But it wasn't any like physical abuse or anything. There was nothing that I couldn't handle. It was just teachers. It was just more kids testing the boundaries because they didn't know where they stood with you as a new teacher, and they had a lot going on at home. I think a lot of that comes down to understanding the children, building relationships. With the children I taught, there was a range of extra needs such as mental health issues, extra diagnoses such as ADHD, and of course social needs. There were a lot of kids that had mental health issues, just a lot of emotional needs, and a lot of that stems from social issues like what's going on at home. And that was a real struggle, because a lot of the time you're trying to build relationships with the kids, and so that they could trust you and they would come to you and open up to you, so they could trust you as a teacher, which I loved. I loved that part of the job, but I felt like there wasn't much support for me to do that. Like, I was almost acting in many ways as a social worker. As a teacher, you do get involved with social work and you are part of a child protection scheme. That's fine, that's part of the job. But I feel like there is a lot that weighs on you, and there's a lot of responsibility on you, more than you would ever be told that it's going to happen. And the unfortunate reality is there's not much that you can do as a teacher. I'd listen to like my kids talking about what's happening, and everything that they would say, you'd report to the child protection lead. A lot of time, a lot of emotional energy that you need to give to that child and spend writing up notes on top of the work. Like there's a lot going on, and I don't think that it shouldn't be part of the job, but I think there should be more support for teachers and more pastoral leads in schools. The real challenge wasn't so much the children, but the lack of support in terms of no teaching assistants and no SEN support in schools. One of the schools I worked in, they had, when this is in like post COVID times, a lot of schools still had COVID funding. There were like 10 SEN like support teachers in schools, and then the moment in the spring term the COVID funding all dried up, and all of a sudden all those support teachers went. There was one in a whole school, and this was a school that had a lot of children that had extra support needs in the school. All of a sudden we just had no help one day. On top of all the work, you have all these needs and there's just no support for you. I found the anxiety built up each week because I wasn't being given the right guidance, and the atmosphere in the staff room was pretty toxic as well. I heard other teachers making derogatory remarks behind my back. Yeah, no, so I had overheard a few comments from teachers talking about me, like senior leadership teachers, and yeah, I mean, that really, as a brand new teacher who's relying on those exact people for help, to overhear them, doesn't exactly build the most trusting relationship. It's really hard to feel supported when you know that people are criticizing you. A lot of the schools that I did my student training in, there are so many comments and times I have overheard teachers just make comments that I would just think you should never make about a child, and never make about a student. I think a lot of it is maybe just sense of humour, but then I just think I personally am very child right focused. I think that children and babies, no one talks about how babies are humans, right? Everyone's like, oh, babies just cry all the time. They just should be screaming. You should just leave them in their cot and just let them scream. Imagine someone just being like, do you know what? Just shut up and go and just cry on your own. Appalling. So I am very much child focused. My baby isn't equal to me in many ways. Obviously, I'm his mum, so it's a bit different. I communicate with my 8-month-old as if he is equal to me, because he is. And that is the attitude that I have towards children and students. And the unfortunate reality is that that isn't a view that is shared by everyone. And even people that are looking after children, they don't have that view, and they very much do think that they are better than children, or more important, or have more of a say, and that's not the reality. And it all comes down to the language that they're using. Like, are you building a child up with the words that you use? A lot of people aren't, and I find that sort of way of speaking very toxic. Anyway, back onto the article. I think with the right support I could have gritted my teeth and got through it. There were 4 different levels of ability within the class I had, so I had to tailor each piece of work 4 different ways and mark it accordingly. The same with homework, and then there's the pastoral stuff. After a few weeks I began to get stomach pains from the stress, and I handed my notice in halfway through the term and left at Christmas. As I said, all the extra needs, the pastoral stuff, that is such a minefield, is so much work. Rightly so, you have to deliver content to each child at the level that they can work at and can just about sort of be pushed towards. However, the onus and stress and work that you have to do to be able to do that for every single lesson that you teach, and then homework on top. Maybe, I don't know if it's different in England, I think it is, but in Scotland, schools do not have the money to pay for curriculum content. Like, they don't have money to pay for White Rose and all these maths work schemes and literacy work schemes, because they're expensive. Schools in Scotland have no money. So when it comes to curriculum, the onus of the curriculum and the resources that you use are on the teacher as an individual. A lot of teachers in Scotland feel the pressure to reinvent the wheel. They feel the pressure that they need to make their own worksheets, because the worksheets that they have in the school are from the 1990s. They're really outdated. They're just not appropriate for the children's needs. So the expectation is that you then make your own worksheets. And I don't think that's wrong. But when you have to do that for 3 different sets, for like every lesson of the day, it's mental. Then you have to do homework for every single day of the week, and then you have to mark it all as well. And yes, there are ways that you can try and get around marking, like self-marking or peer marking, but the reality is that the onus is on you, because you're the one that needs to mark it, and you need to know where all the kids are at. So I don't think I'll be going back to teaching, and my plan at the moment is to homeschool my son when the time comes. I don't want him growing up in an environment like that. I understand why so many teachers are leaving the UK. I know quite a lot of people who have gone to Dubai and a few to Australia. It's mostly about the workload, but also lifestyle and money. When it's Dubai, there's a lot of money. Like these kids that are going to these sort of independent international schools aren't the same kids that are going to your local state school. They're just not. And they have so many more resources, so much more support. So I know a lot of people are doing it, and I can't blame them in many ways. Like it's exactly the same with nursing and doctors, that a lot of nurses and doctors, they don't like their work conditions here. They work too much. They're not getting paid enough. They can go to Australia and make so much more money and not have as much stress on them. Why would they stay here? So I do really feel like there's a massive brain drain from this country of any qualified professional. Dentists, doctors, nurses, teachers, they're all leaving because they can get more money elsewhere, or they can work for an agency. Like in the NHS, there are so many people that are working through agencies and they get like triple the amount than if they were just a full-time NHS staff member. And they don't have to be committed to that one hospital. They don't have to stay at that one hospital and have like a toxic stress work environment. They can go move around all the different hospitals. The unfortunate thing is that teachers, when they're doing the private agency work, they don't get any more money. They, in fact, a lot of the time you actually take a pay cut to go through an agency in the UK. And that is why they're all moving abroad. I then say, since going on maternity leave, Joanna has become a content creator, giving mums a voice on her YouTube channel, Joanna Stewart, discussing motherhood, fitness, teaching, and in the environment, among other things. Yeah, I'm obviously on my maternity leave, and I've been making videos. My plan, as I had said, I've been really toing and froing about the idea of homeschooling my son. Yes, he's only 8 months old, but I do feel like education starts from, well, day one, really. I would like to have more children, and I would like to homeschool them myself. I would love to get out into the world, because I think that you can learn so much more in the real world than by sitting in a classroom, which is ironic. I'm a teacher and I'm saying that. Like, I want to take them to museums and the park and rivers and talk about the water cycle by watching it happen. So that's really my passion. I would love to make content as well about homeschooling and try and inspire people to, think outside the box, and that's kind of what I'd like to do in the future. Technically, I'm employed as a supply teacher. Will I be returning? Find out in the next video. But I also do really, really have a passion to give a different message to parents and teachers and just people that are interested in what I've got to talk about. There's so many myths about parenting and children, and I just want to debunk them all. I've got so many things that I want to say, and I want to spark debate about basically like a nurture revolution. Like, I read the book Nurture Revolution, and it has just changed the way I think about everything, in terms of children, adults, mental health, pregnancy, sleep, everything to do with children and adults as well, like therapy. I have been planning content. This is just my teaching page. So although I don't want to return to teaching, I've got a lot to say about it. So if you would like me to talk more about that, let me know in the comments. Maybe I can get in the sun next. You never know. That's how I got in the Daily Mail, and they're my thoughts on the brain drain from the UK in terms of teaching. Thanks for watching. Please do give me a like. It would mean so much if you could subscribe. Is there anything that you'd like me to expand on from this video? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, subscribe, and I'll see you later.